Ever wondered how to make a panorama images? If you have, then this video is for you. Hi there, I'm Peter Forsgaard, an Olympus visionary and a professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. And let's get back outside. I will be making panoramas here in one of my favorite places here in Helsinki, Vanhan kaupungin koski. And I will be making a simple, quick and dirty panorama with the EM10 Mark II and the kit lens 14 to 42 millimeter electronic zoom lens. And then I have a bit better kit or more professional kit if you want to make it really serious panoramas. Let's talk about some theory first. An image is considered to be a panorama if the aspect ratio is 2:1 or more. So the longer end has to be twice as long as the other side. The reason I have this quite big and heavy rig is that I can move this camera or turn it around the nodal point of the lens. Some more theory, I will tell you what a nodal point is. Nodal point is the center of the lens, and to get the best individual images for a panorama you need to turn your camera around the nodal point of the lens. And the best way to check that your camera is adjusted exactly on the right place on the rig is to place two vertical objects aligned and then turn the camera, and if the objects that are aligned are not moving, you know, when you compare them to each other, they stay at the same place, so they don't go like this, but when you turn the camera they are like this, then you will have your camera set up correctly for panorama so that it will rotate around the nodal point. And the settings for the first image, which was taken with the EM1 Mark II and the 7 to 14mm f2.8 zoom lens. I had the zoom lens at 7mm and everything was on manual. The shutter speed was 1/40th of a second, f5.6 was the aperture, and the ISO was 200. And the white balance was set to cloudy because it was a cloudy weather. When doing panoramas, it's important to set everything to manual because then you have a constant exposure on all of your images, and you also will have a constant white balance. It's a lot easier to blend those or stitch. It's not called blending, it's actually called stitch those images together. On this particular panorama I took 4 images. And remember, when you're doing panoramas, always overlap the images. So the first image, and then you will overlap with the next image a bit. 1/3, maybe 1/4 is enough. It depends on your lens. The longer the lens, the less overlap you need. But remember, always overlapping some. And here is the final image that I took with this combo. It's not a masterpiece, but it works as a very good example for this panorama video. And this image was made with Lightroom. And with Lightroom it's quite easy to make the panorama. It's almost automated. You just select the images that are included in your panorama, and here are my 4 images. You go to Photo, Photo Merge, then you choose Panorama, and it takes for a little while. And here we have, it's almost done. As you can see from here, having the nodal point set correctly, even a very close object is almost perfect. And what's good about Lightroom is that even though you have these empty spots here, but if you do fill edges and do bounty warp, and we need to go all the way to 100, and voila, it will fill quite nicely the empty spots. And then all you do is merge, and it will merge your panorama. This is a DNG file, so this can be edited some more if you want. And if you wonder why the water is so brown, it's because there's a lot of mud in this river. So it's mud, not any waste or something like, or sewage or anything like that. It's from the Vantaajoki, and it's a lot of mud in there. That's why the color is a bit odd. Well, what about the image with this combo? It's a lot faster and it is also quite easy. Let's see what the settings are for panorama shots. To make panoramas with the EM10 Mark II, of course, can be done just the way I did it with the EM1 Mark II. But EM10 Mark II has a dedicated panorama mode. First you choose SCN from the mode dial, and then you choose panorama, and it will give you these guides. And a very handy line where you can keep the horizon also straight and at the same place, so it's easier to stitch those images after you have shot them. And with the arrow pads you can change the direction of the panorama shots that you are going to take. So if you want to take them vertically like I did, and that's also what I recommend you to do, so choose vertical with the arrow pad and then start shooting guidelines. It makes it easier for you to overlap those images. And when you're done, you press OK, and that's it. And I will show you how to stitch these images together with Olympus Workspace. If you want to use Olympus Workspace for your panorama stitching, you need to shoot them in panorama mode. Otherwise, Workspace won't stitch your panorama. But a few things before we get into the Workspace and how to stitch that photos that I just took together. Remember, when making the panoramas, it's important that you hold your camera so that you can rotate it around the nodal point. So don't do this. Instead, do this. I know, it was a pretty bad acting, but what can you do? I'm not an actor. But you get the point. Rotate the camera around the nodal point, so you will have a better starting point for Olympus Workspace to stitch those images. But let's get into the Workspace and see how the image came out. Here we are in Olympus Workspace, and I have selected the 4 images that I took with EM10 Mark II and the kit lens 14 to 42mm. These are taken with 14mm and the aperture was 5.0 and the shutter speed was 125th of a second. 125th of a second, yes. And what it does, which I did not mention, is that these come from the first image. It will measure the light in the first image when you take it, and then it will use the same values for all the images. So that's the way it works with the EM10 Mark II. When you want to do the panorama, you go to Tools, Auto Panorama, and you press Stitch, and let's see what happens. Olympus Workspace is not the fastest software. That's one of its downsides. Otherwise, it's a pretty good software. And here we have the final image. It did a pretty good job. It will crop the image, but this will be more of a panorama than the one that I did with Lightroom. But let's check it out, and we'll just save this, and then we'll give it a file name. We'll give it a panorama, and then we will export, and we chose it to be TIFF, and the export is completed. And here you can see the image. It has not been retouched at all, so it's straight out of camera and straight out of Workspace as a stitched panorama. As you saw, making panoramas is not hard. It's actually quite easy, and panoramas can make some really good images. My images weren't really that stunning, but for the purpose of this video, I think they were fine for that purpose. Have you ever made panorama shots? How did they come out? Did you have more stunning images than I did? And to conclude this video, remember to make it easier for the stitching software to stitch those images, to turn the camera around the lens's nodal point. And if you do it handheld, do as I showed you in the video. And the second thing is, try to have everything in manual if you're doing them without the panorama mode. And if you're using the panorama mode, remember that the exposure will be locked from the first image that you took. Well, I hope you enjoyed the videos, and next you might want to watch these photography tutorials that I have in my channel. And don't forget to subscribe either. Hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now!